without being rage baity. Our motto for this year, less culture wars, more culture. I am your host, Megan Daum. I am delighted, as always, to welcome back novelist and commentator Lionel Shriver. I think it's fair to say you're a friend of the pod, Lionel. I don't know if you'll accept the friendship of
well,
podcasts.
I'm a friend of yours.
Okay.
I think that's good enough.
Okay. All right. You know, some of my best friends are podcasts. We're here to talk about your new novel, A Better Life, which we touched on briefly last time you were here. I think maybe you were here a year ago. Feels like less because I know we did a conversation together on stage in New York, but I'm excited to talk about this book, as well as some other things. So congratulations on this. You just, for people who need a recap about you, we should say that you're one of the few novelists that take on social issues directly, and you've been doing this for a long time. Some examples would be your 2010 novel, So Much for That, which was about the American healthcare system, medical bankruptcy, the labyrinth of our insurance system. Then you had The New Republic, which had to do with terrorism, Big Brother, which had to do with obesity, The Mandibles is about economic collapse, Should We Stay or Should We Go, which I know you came on the podcast to talk about, favorite subject of mine, which is assisted suicide. So you've taken these subjects on. Now you've taken on immigration. You were ahead of the curve because you started writing this novel before the latest wave of, let's say, extreme topicality. When did you start thinking about this novel? When did you know you wanted to write about immigration?
I've wanted to write about immigration for probably 35 years. It's an outgrowth of my interest in demography, which goes back to the age of 16 for me, because I was very taken with the whole population explosion issue in my youth, which has morphed bizarrely into population implosion in the West. So that's been an interesting arc to travel. But anyone interested in demography has to be interested in immigration. It's a natural outgrowth of the same field. And at that same time, I have also been an immigrant myself twice over, as well as going back to a city, New York, regularly, which is in some ways ground zero beyond, if you get beyond Texas, it's ground zero in immigration in the United States. So it's a big part of my personal life, and it's also a long-term interest. And so I was always on the lookout for the right scenario, because having a subject is not the same thing as having an idea for a novel.
Right. Yes.
So I had to frame it right. I had to have the right point of entry. And I was listening to the news in 2023 when then Mayor Eric Adams of New York City proposed that he was in the midst of this inundation of migration coming up from the southern border during the Biden administration, literally hundreds of thousands of people coming to the city. And he proposed that in order to handle the influx, that New Yorkers be paid to put up migrants in their spare bedrooms. So,
because so many New Yorkers have spare bedrooms.
That was a novel idea. That was not just a city program. That was a book waiting to be written. And funnily enough, Adams never brought this program to fruition, which was even better as far as I was concerned. So that it became a purely fictional project and spared me doing a lot of research with people who were really putting up migrants in their spare bedrooms, and I could just make my own story up.
Okay, well, I will say that I want to spend some time talking about the novel, of course, but I do maybe in the second half of this conversation want to talk about these ideas around population growth. And suddenly, I'm assuming you grew up with this idea of the population bomb, and this has to do with fertility. And I think this is something that we've talked about before, this
Yes.
question of whether or not to have children. Is this a moral duty? So I definitely want to talk about that with you. But first, let's talk about this particular novel. So you've got these characters. I have to say, part of the reason I love this novel so much is because the house is almost a central character. It's this big house in Ditmas Park, sort of one of these. Is it a Victorian? I mean, how would you? I don't even know what the.
It's the style of architecture is Queen Anne. And
Okay.
this is a turn of the century architectural style. That neighborhood about which many people know nothing, even in New York. It doesn't look like New York.
Right.
It has these huge houses, and it has an interesting history because of course, it was very prosperous when these houses were first built. Big lawns and really classy architecture. I mean, I love this neighborhood. I'm familiar with it partly because my tennis partner and I go through this neighborhood on the way to the place we have been playing tennis for years. So in the summer, I'm going past these houses 8 times a week, and we use different routes, different times, just to take in the architecture. I mean, and it's absolutely fabulous. And I have to admit, it gives me property envy.
Yes. Yeah.
I
So.
feel that there is a parallel universe in which I own one of those houses. I love them.
Oh my gosh.
And it's funnily enough, there probably was a point at which I could have afforded to buy one, although I couldn't have afforded to fix it up because in the 60s and 70s, the place went to hell. I mean, along with everywhere in New York in the 60s and 70s, especially 70s. It was a crime-ridden, very, very dangerous. The houses fell apart. No one was keeping them up, and of course, nobody could afford to heat them because these are, high ceilings with five bedrooms, and it's just ludicrous and not properly insulated.
Right.
So you could pick them up by the early 90s, which is when the family I'm writing about bought one, and for a comparative song. And the husband in this story did a lot of the renovation work himself because that was cheaper
Right.
than hiring somebody to do it. And they took a big risk by investing in a neighborhood that was not guaranteed to gentrify, but it did. And it is now very posh. And anyone who made that investment, it has paid off many times over. So I like that. I like that history, which I include in the book. I don't go on at length, but it's important because the people who own this house seem as if they're incredibly wealthy, but they are not. They have property wealth. It's a particular kind of wealth, which I know you're familiar with.
Well, not personally familiar with it, but yes.
Well, you can't enjoy
conceptually.
it without losing it, right? You have to sell the property in order to be that wealthy, and then you have nowhere to live. So,
Right. So.
but you're quite right that the house is a character. And this is not the first time I've done this. A Perfectly Good Family is all about a house and who owns the house. It's an inheritance dispute between 3 siblings. And I'm drawn to these stories. I think I've always had property envy. I didn't own any property, and then, of course, jointly with my husband until I was 50 years old. So I've been a renter for much of my life in search of my real home, and I think that that desire infuses the books secretly.
Maybe that's why I'm so drawn to them. It's one of the reasons. That's funny because I know you've talked about how you're interested in property, but yes, how property
Yes,
can
in fact, I,
mean a
I
lot of
have a
things.
short story collection which is entitled
Yes,
Property.
yes, yeah. So this family, they are, they're sort of X class. I mean, to use the Paul Fussell typology, they're liberals. They're kind of artsy. They're educated, but they don't have a lot of wealth. They're in this house. It's they have the trappings of a particular kind of intellectual, sophisticated aesthetic. They are now divorced, so it's the mother, Gloria, living in the house with her adult son, Nico. There's also two daughters, Nico's sisters, who, in typical fashion, have actually managed to move out and get their own places. So describe who Gloria is, and then describe who Nico is, and talk about their dynamic.
Well, Gloria may risk being a cliche, but then a lot of real people do.
Every day, I fight against it myself. Yes.
Right. She's progressive. She thinks of herself as very caring, although her son describes her as someone who reserves most of her compassion for people she's never met. So she's one of those progressives whose deepest commitment is to the people who are most distant from her, which is a kind of anti-female. It's anti-maternal. It's a funny emotional reversal. And so she latches on to all the predictable causes. When October 7th comes along, which is made note of in the book without it being a major event, she duly trumps out and protests on behalf of the Palestinians. And she doesn't know a single Palestinian. I mean, it's a lot of these commitments are these ideological commitments are very abstract. But of course, she cares about immigrants and responds to the influx of all these people in New York who need her help. And previous to when the book starts, she's got supermarkets to start, food drives, getting people to contribute canned goods and tortillas. And she's been taking pizzas to the queues around the Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown Manhattan that has become, it was in real life, in fact, the intake center for migration in New York. So when she hears about it, the mayor's proposal to pay her money that she could definitely use to put up in migrants, she's one of the first to make a bid, and fair enough. She asks only for a single female migrant because it seems safer than taking in a man, and it's not. Doesn't seem like an extravagant and ridiculous act of altruism just to take in this one person. So, like, she's not taking in a whole family. Nevertheless, this doesn't prove to be the last person she absorbs into her household. And the whole story is seen through the eyes of her 26-year-old son, who is quietly much more conservative. And I would say, and typically for a Gen Z person who was born in 1997, he's right on the generational cusp, and so he regards himself in opposition to what he calls the women, capital T, capital W, meaning his mother and his two sisters, who are always ganging up on him and have all the same political opinions. He's especially hostile to the inundation of migrants in New York City. He is very suspicious of their motivation. He regards them as mooches on public assistance. And of course, his situation is his perspective is somewhat undermined by his own situation, because he himself is a mooch. He's living at home. He's frittering down little by little an inheritance from his grandfather, and that's something that I mean to be metaphorical, because there's a way in which Nico and the likes of many other Nicos are spending down their inheritance without contributing to something to pass on to the next generation, including not making the next generation. None of these three kids have had children.
Right.
Now, I should add, this book has been, it has been controversial. It has divided people right down the middle and along predictable political lines, because in addition to telling what I think is a cracking good story, it also has a lot of discussion of the issue of immigration, which I'm of the view that there are two sides to, and that's not the progressive perspective. The progressive perspective is that there is only one side, and that is the good side. And in that, I also represent the bad side. This book has come in for a lot of stick from left of center media outlets for being, for promoting great replacement theory and being far right, etc.
Okay.
It makes me roll my eyes.
Right. Lionel, oh my gosh, this is a first. We are somehow live. We are somehow doing this live. Something went wrong when I hit the record button. We have very few people watching us, but they are there. Do you want to proceed, or do you want to start over again?
I don't know. What do you want to do?
Guys,
It's totally up to you,
this is
because
the
you're the
problem.
one
No,
who's
this
in
is
control.
okay. This is the problem with this. When you're trying to do this by yourself,
You
somehow.
don't have a tech person.
No, I don't have a tech person. I don't.
You
Okay,
are
you
the
know what?
tech
I think we should just proceed, because they're there, and we don't need to do any. We don't need to do any.
Well, you can still put it up
take
on
twos.
your
Yeah, no, of course. All right,
site.
because people are actually leaving questions in the chat. Good Lord. Okay. All right, fine, guys.
Are any of the questions interesting?
Yeah. Well, now let's see. I guess we're streaming. I mean, we have 12 people watching us. Okay. All right. We'll edit this. We'll edit this properly for the final version. But okay. All right. I want to talk about Nico, because he's actually a surprisingly nuanced TM around here character. I don't think it would not be fair to call him some kind of like just disgruntled, sort of MAGA leaning. He's really not a cliche. He's very complicated, and he's, in a strange way, I was listening to you describe him. I mean, yes, he is living in the basement, and he is a sort of, has these sort of Gen Z trappings, but he's also weirdly living a life of the mind. He doesn't do anything, but he does get up and take very long walks, and he listens to podcasts, and he's in his head, and he thinks a lot. So how did you start putting him together as a character? Because I found him extremely compelling, I have to say.
I like him. And that in putting him together, I surprised myself, because the qualities that he embodies are not those that I would usually admire. I don't admire his circumstances, or I shouldn't, but I sort of did. I mean, I thought, well, as long as you can get away with it, there's something to be said for not having any ambition. You can't fail. It's very relaxing. What is there to accomplish anyway?
Right.
What would you be chasing after that is truly desirable? And isn't there something to this more Zen state of being without desire? That there is a kind of purity to that, and peace, tranquility to that I could see. And also I find him very thoughtful. Obviously he's thinking things through me. I'm thinking things through him, but I found him an interesting filter. That complete lack of interest in adulthood, and therefore kind of seeing through it, and having and just like, you can have it. I don't want it. Go ahead. I'm not going to interrupt. You can keep having your little adult scene, but I'm mostly just going to embrace the role of observer, which is very authorial. So
Yeah, he should be a writer.
Right? And it makes perfect sense that I would begin to find that a seductive viewpoint. But I really ended up sympathizing with his circumstances more than judging them. And in spite of the fact that I established his circumstances in order to deliberately undermine his perspective. So, and certainly to complicate it, to make it so that isn't he a hypocrite? Does he really have a leg to stand on? And it made the book structurally less polemical,
Right.
which was important to me. I wanted to explore the issue because I'm so fascinated in the its many different facets, and the way you can look at it differently depending on your political disposition. But I didn't want it to fall into just a debate, much less a kind of fat pamphlet for however I personally view the immigration debate. So,
Yeah.
And I find that having structured the book through Nico's viewpoint is really, it's the secret to why it works as a narrative, as a novel.
He's one of my favorite characters of yours that I've read in a very long time. He's not an incel, technically.
No.
He
No.
doesn't have a girlfriend. I mean, he doesn't seem he consumes a lot of pornography. He listens to a lot of podcasts. He's definitely a sort of vessel for the many of the maladies of our time, but he's also clearly a highly intelligent person and is interested in complexity. And I got the sense is interested in wrestling with his own contradictions and hypocrisies. So in terms of like the content, as they say, that he's consuming, how did you come up with that? I mean, I know he listens to Jordan Peterson sometimes. Does Douglas Murray's name get dropped? You have a lot of you have a kind of like a heterodox Easter eggs throughout this book. Describe
I've
his,
had any number of podcasters object that they did not arise in the text.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
But I was, I sprinkled only 2 or 3 names to give you the flavor of the kind of stuff that he's listening to. But, it's stuff that I listen to. I mean, because I'm genuinely interested in the immigration debate, then I listen to podcasts talking about immigration, usually while I'm exercising, all the time. And so, yeah, like I dropped Victor David Hansen's name, and it doesn't take more than 2 or 3 to get the idea.
All right. So I don't want to give away too much of the story. I will say that I was not expecting where it was going to go. It gets, we have the immigrant that comes and lives with the family. Her name is Martine. She's from Honduras. On the surface, she's like sort of like alarmingly perfect. She wants to help. She wants to clean all the time. She's very cheerful. And Nico, kind of eventually can't help but, have a fondness for her. And the story just gets more and more. It has been described as going off the rails by some of your critics.
All that means is it has a plot.
Okay. Okay. I
Literary
thought the plot was
reviewers are not
on
used
a
to
rail.
anything happening.
Okay. Okay.
So,
That's
yes,
true. That's
things
true.
happen.
The minute you have stuff happen, you're down market. But there were moments. See, I think this is a testament to how complicated this character is, because there were moments where I was starting to think, oh my gosh, this whole story is taking place in his head. Like he's hallucinating. Like things are getting so extreme that there's no way this could actually be part of the internal logic of the novel. And it sort of didn't end up going that way. So I just thought that was I was very much taken by surprise.
Yeah,
Can we?
I think it's very unlikely that readers will anticipate the plot, will anticipate the ending. Um, it's meant to be a surprise. It's been called a thriller, and I think it is. I think that's exactly what it is. And it has also been called a satire, and I don't think so. The
No.
satire implies that it is in some ways exaggerated for political effect, and I don't think it is exaggerated. There's nothing, despite all that accusation about, oh, it goes off the rails, there's nothing that happens in this book that is not perfectly plausible. I started out with something, with the concept, which was plausible because it was actually proposed politically. It just didn't happen, but it clearly could have. And, I've read much more outlandish stories than this in the
Yeah.
newspaper. I think it's totally credible.
Let's go back to your initial interest in immigration. So you said at the beginning of this conversation that as a teenager, you had been very influenced by population bomb kind of discourse. Paul Ehrlich, author of The Population Bomb, had a huge impact on several generations. I'm a little younger than you, but I definitely grew up assuming that the world was overpopulated, that we were going to be doing everybody a favor by not reproducing. If you were a good person, you would think twice about that. How did that sort of manifest for you just personally, and how did you start to rethink it?
Well, I don't think that the fact that I didn't end up having children is related directly to having grown up with Paul Ehrlich on my bookshelf. And despite the people who were walking around sanctimoniously wearing ZPG buttons on
Oh,
their
zero
jacket.
population growth? Yeah,
Yeah. That was very big back then.
right.
And that was basically promising your fellow citizens that at the most you would have 2 children, but certainly not more. And it was also implicitly encouraging people to not have children because that would bring the average down. I didn't have kids for personal and more, more intimate reasons. That I'm not very maternal. I'm just not.
It hasn't stopped a lot of people, but okay.
Yeah. So, but it has been interesting to follow because I have kept track of demographics. It's to follow the arc and to watch. It's only been we've been having a below replacement fertility rate in the West for decades. on average. So it's interesting that it's only recently that it's been a big deal in the newspaper and that people are aware of it. But it's been going on forever. I mean, Italy has had a fertility rate of something like 1.2 for, what is it, 40 years, 50 years, something like that. And it's starting to tell because it takes a little while. There's a lag. And especially when you start out with a younger population, it takes a long time for the population to start genuinely shrinking. But that process has started, and that process has its own momentum in the same way that a young population has a momentum that increases your population. The population, the pyramid that is crimped at the bottom, not very many babies, that rises up, and
Right.
that shrinkage starts gaining, it gains momentum, and it's very hard to stop. It's hard to pull, hard to reverse. And so you've got a situation in South Korea where, I mean, their birth rate is well below 1. It's something like 0.8. And by the end of this century, that country could almost not exist. That population could almost not exist. It's astonishing. In some ways, this is a mathematical fascination of mine, because there's an inevitability built into the numbers. So you can change things a little bit, but not a whole lot, and certainly not very fast. By contrast, the fact that the continent of Africa is likely to have at least 4 billion people by the end of the century is also a near inevitability. So that disparity, this is where I get interested in immigration, right? And that's going to put enormous further pressure on European borders unless Africa miraculously transforms into Valhalla and nobody wants to leave.
Okay, well, the
But
obvious,
my personal views have gradually transformed, because I was completely persuaded by the alarming graph of human population when I was an adolescent, and that persisted for quite some time. And it would say if you ever seen a graph of human population for this basically the duration of our species, it just goes tiny, 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 tiny. And it's fucking terrifying, right? I used to have that graph.
When did it go up? Like what period?
Basically, it started seriously going up about 100 years ago, which is, historically absolutely nothing. And most of that near vertical trajectory has been during my lifetime, which is staggering.
And why did it go up 100 years ago? Because people were not dying, like people were, you didn't have like dying
We're not
in infancy,
dying.
and we had
There were
antibiotics.
improvements in medicine,
Right, okay.
improvements in maternal mortality,
Right, okay.
in child mortality.
Right.
Yeah, all the
Vaccines, okay, right.
vaccines,
Right.
everything. And people, and it took a while for people to figure out that their kids were surviving. So you didn't have to have 10 in order to have 3 left. So people had by tradition larger families and hadn't caught up to
Right.
the medical situation. So, and then you go through what's classically called the demographic transition. It usually happens along with urbanization, because people move to the cities, children aren't tilling your fields, etc., and fertility plummets. what demographers did not anticipate before this happened is that it keeps going down. And that's fascinating. And I'm very interested in why people are not having very many children anymore. And I'm, if we're going to view it as a problem, I'm part of the problem.
Same.
When I was making my decisions about my fertility, not only was I not making them in relation to what the prevalent fertility rate was and what was my duty, but my generation didn't have a problem with below replacement rate fertility, and my decision to not have children was at that time unusual. And so while, I'm not into the Handmaid's Tale thing, and it's not as if I think women should be forced
I think a lot
to
of
bear
people are
children
into
they
it
don't
for
want.
for unconscious
But
fetishistic reasons. But okay, yes, yeah.
but the decision that I made that I didn't want to be a mother is only viable writ large if it is unusual.
Yeah,
It cannot be the norm.
we have to
If
be
it is the
outliers.
norm,
Yes.
we're finished. And so, I think you and I had a conversation in New York recently about how someone had seen another podcast I'd done that got into this area and was upset that I seemed to be saying that I regretted not having children, and that seemed to would seem dishonest or in some ways a betrayal of the cause, or it's kind of a crap cause, but I think insofar as it's a cause,
Oh, you
it's
mean
merely
like like the feminist cause? What do you mean? What
oh,
cause
well,
do you
I
mean?
mean, yes, we should all have the right to not bear children if we don't want to.
Okay.
And of
The
course,
choosing
I
my
still,
choice cause. Yeah.
we should have kids because we want to and not out of a sense of pure duty. But while it's completely psychically and emotionally unrealistic for anyone to have children to raise the fertility rate in their country. I mean, it's just not, that doesn't work. On the other hand, I think it is worth reflecting on why we don't consider having children as the natural default anymore.
Do you think we really don't, though?
I think we really don't. It is an elective. It is not a norm that people feel they have to adhere to.
And you think that is true, like across all demographics and socioeconomic classes and
It
geographical
isn't
locations?
perfectly true. Interestingly, there's a political divide on this point.
Right.
And if you're right of center, you're much more likely to have children and more children. The fertility rate is, I don't remember what the difference is, but it's beyond statistically significant. It's astonishing. It's the right of center people who are having kids, and the left of center are not. And well, I guess if you're a conservative, this is good news.
Yeah, you're
because,
making more conservatives. This is so.
yeah,
Do
the
you
other
think
side is going to die out.
Is this a religious thing? I mean, the obvious analysis would be this is like some kind of this is religiously driven, or people are Christian, or they don't, they just have a more sort of family orientation. But that seems a little bit simplistic to me. I mean, what do you think is really going on there?
Religion is obviously an ingredient. I don't think it's the only explanation. It was in your book. I published an essay that had first come out in The Guardian in a collection you put together. And, it wasn't especially like, yay, feminism, I'm so glad I didn't have kids.
No,
I've had such
I
a
would have rejected
fulfilling
your
life. It was
essay. If that were
nothing
the
of the
case.
kind, right?
Right.
It was looking at what I thought was a plausible explanation for why people are having such either such small families or no families. And that was really nothing less than what is the meaning of life. In other words, what is your purpose? What is your aim? And it had changed over the generations from serving various duties, which include the duty to pass on your line, to be a part, to invest in the future, to be a part of your country and society, and it was also I think just a way of thinking which is much more historical, to a point where we think that the purpose of life is to be happy, personally happy. And if you think in rather shallow terms about what happiness means, which people tend to, then you want to go on holidays and have a nice house.
Yeah.
And
I'll take the latter, not the former. I don't like
right,
vacations, but I like having a
you
nice
want to have
house.
friends and dinner parties and a car. Who needs children?
Well, okay, but people
And
with kids have friends and dinner parties and cars. But yeah, I get your
but I
drift.
said
Yes.
shallow.
Okay.
And what I was making the case for in that essay was that everything that has meaning to me in my life has been hard to get. And it's the things that we do that require sacrifice on the short term for long-term gain that bring real meaning to our life, and I would say therefore real happiness. That it's a shallow understanding of happiness is the big mistake. And the obvious example in my life for doing something hard that has long-term reward is writing books. But I would argue that bearing and raising children is way harder, and potentially for the right people, probably not for me because I wasn't the right person, but for most people, ends up being the most gratifying achievement of their lives. And I'm
Yes.
willing to go to bat for that prospect. But the trouble is that our concept of happiness is off. And we think it means a good bottle of wine or a single evening where we had a good time. That's deep happiness has to do with often making some pretty big sacrifices in order to achieve something of real value. Another example I gave, it's on a smaller scale, but I when I was younger, I went on a number of long bike trips. Before that was a very fashionable thing to do, and certainly before somebody took all your luggage to your next B&B. And it often involved a lot of misery. The wind was always in my face. Sometimes I couldn't find a place to stay.
Oh, you were by
It
yourself? You did
rained.
these all by
It
yourself?
was hot. I did both. I did it both by myself and with my younger brother.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and the most important to me was the one with my younger brother because that, that's it solidified a very important relationship in my life. So once they were over, I felt a sense of achievement, and I was glad I went, in spite of the fact that I had suffered along the way, and a lot of it had been unpleasant. That was a kind of as a package experience. It was great, right? And that's how I feel about pretty much everything that I've ever done that was gratifying, was that it had to be hard. And we need to think about childbearing along these lines, that yes, it involves sacrifices, but it potentially gives you a reward like none other. And that's what's weird about the arc I've traveled on this particular issue, because I went from my little ZPG pin to meeting younger people, and always taking the opportunity to talk up the idea of their having children. And I find this transformation hilarious.
But I mean, people would, the sort of reductive interpretation of this is that you sort of regret your choice, or you've sort of done a huge, you sort of relitigated this in a major way. But I actually don't see a contradiction. I mean, I feel very similarly that, I always say sort of like, babies for thee, but not for me. I personally feel pretty strongly that it would not have been the right thing for me to do personally, temperamentally. I think that I can just contribute to the world in different ways. And that's not even, that doesn't even necessarily mean as a writer. A little bit of it does, but just sort of generally, I think that I want to just be part of my community in ways that will serve it better than being the kind of mom I would probably be. But I do. So the book that you're referring to, the anthology that I put together, it came out in 2015. It was called Selfish, Shallow, and Self-Absorbed, 16 Writers on the Decision Not to Have Kids. It was not all women, by the way. It was mostly women, but we had three men contribute to the book, including Jeff Dyer, the beloved English writer who wrote a hilarious piece. And part of the reason I wanted to put that book together was that I thought that the child-free movement, and I loathe that term, had really done a huge disservice to the entire conversation, because always the kind of line on people who had chosen not to have kids was that like they would rather have expensive shoes, or they would rather take expensive vacations than have kids. And I've never met anybody who literally decided not to have children because they wanted to go on expensive vacations. Like somebody who said really like, oh, I really want to have kids, but I also really like going on vacations. I guess I'll choose the second one. I never believed people who said that the climate crisis was such that they had chosen not to have kids, at least back then. I mean, when sort of in the 90s, and, all the way up to maybe even 10 years ago, I don't think that, I think it would have been a little bit disingenuous to hear a young person say, I'm so worried about climate change that I'm reducing my carbon footprint.
I have encountered that.
Now they are.
I don't
now
buy it.
I do hear it. Yes.
Yeah. I don't buy it. I think it's a very convenient way of getting out of something hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the entire apocalyptic vision is a kind of cop-out, because there's no future. I don't have to plan for it. It's like you get to be Nico, right?
Yeah.
But feel righteous about it. And I would say Nico doesn't feel righteous about his decision. He feels fine, which is different from feeling morally justified. He doesn't justify it on moral terms at all. It's just he's okay with it. He likes the way things are, but he's not sanctimonious. And I think trying to get out of having a family by using this vague notion that the world is about to end, which, by the way, I can't tell you how many times I've lived through some movement or another that says the world is about to end. I'm sorry, but I don't take this shit seriously anymore. And this is just one more, and it will go by the wayside, and they'll come up with another one. But that's not. I don't buy that reason for not having kids. Nobody's telling you have to have kids, but think about it more seriously than that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and again, I really wanted to reframe the conversation in a way that people were saying, like, if having kids is a really hard, important job, and people who know that they shouldn't do that job shouldn't do it. I mean, to me, it's a way of paying respect to parents. The idea that somehow choosing not to have kids is saying that parents are like, boring losers. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's quite the
It's
opposite. I
not
think it's
prescriptive.
right. No. And
Yeah.
I just think that, and I also think that it's good for kids to grow up in communities where they see that there are responsible adults who aren't necessarily somebody's parents. I mean, I grew up in like, a suburb, most of my adolescence, where like there was nobody who lived there who wasn't part of a nuclear family. Like there just wasn't part of the environment. And I don't think that's great either. But yeah, I mean, I really think that Jordan Peterson, for instance, was right when he talked about, for most people have boring lives. Like most people hate their jobs or aren't necessarily very, don't derive a lot of meaning in them. And like he said, what else are you going to do? Like
Yeah.
you should have a family. You should find a partner, ideally get married to them or commit in some major way and have a family. I think that is probably better for most people, but not everyone. So how has it been for you to kind of hold the line on the fact that it wouldn't have been right for you? Like, does it seem like this strange form of exceptionalism? Like, oh, I must be so special, even though it feels true to
No,
you?
well, and I hardly, because not having children has been normalized, I'm hardly ever pressed on to justify that decision. Obviously, it's too late anyway, so that would be a waste of time. Um, I I mean, I'm comfortable with my own hypocrisy. So, I'm the one who has to live with it. I I think I would have had handsome children, but that doesn't rule out the possibility that it would have been a catastrophe and they would have hated me. And in some ways, I wouldn't have blamed them because I don't think I would be a very good mother. Um, I'm I am too self-involved. I am too interested in my work. Um, and I've extended myself to having a husband, and that's hard enough. Um, so uh, it doesn't cause me any discomfort. I am not. I'm not sent into throes. I'm comfortable with the decisions I made. I think they were right for me. I'm also comfortable with my nakedly pro-natalist position now, in relation to other people. And I acknowledge that, don't do as I say, don't do as I did, is, well, it's not a very persuasive position, but that's the position I inevitably occupy.
Right. Okay. Now, but the obvious responses to some of this are, well, you say you're selfish, but there's no cure for selfishness like becoming a parent. You would not be selfish anymore. You would realize that there were bigger things. You would be a totally different kind of person. Then there's also the obvious question, how do you know it's not right for you if you've never done it? I also wonder that about shooting heroin. I'm not going to find out. I mean, how do you respond to those kinds of responses?
I don't. I mean, it's just not a big issue, and I get it in the neck for my views on immigration. I never get it in the neck because I didn't have children, or that I have changed my mind about promoting rather than discouraging childbearing. I mean, I'm not under the gun on that one. It doesn't affect me. It's something to talk about.
Why do you think you would be a bad mother?
Because I don't want to be distracted from my own purposes to serve someone else's. That's motherhood for you.
And they would say, well, you wouldn't feel that way once you became a mother. And actually, I don't know that that's true, because I know a lot of women who do still feel that way, but they just trudge on and they don't talk about it out loud. I mean, there was actually, did you see the piece in New York Magazine a couple of days ago? It was one of their regular, pandering to their audience. It was like women who regretted having children, and it was sort of, testimonials from a
I
few of
didn't
them, and
see
it had
that.
a big clickbaity, rage baity headline, and it's always, people who are at like the most difficult stage, like very young children or toddlers or postpartum or this kind of thing. But I always say, like, try typing "I regret having kids" into a Google search, and you will be shocked. There are a lot of people out there who are, talking about these
Well, I
things
certainly didn't want to
anonymously.
be one of them.
Right.
And, that's the book that made my reputation, if we're going to add a little irony on top of this whole discussion, is about one such woman who was on the fence about whether to have a kid and went ahead and had one anyway, and then definitely lived to regret it. Although she had a subsequent kid whom she loved, and the first kid ends up becoming a mass murderer at his high school. And she has to look back on what happened and wonder whether it's all her fault because she didn't really bond with her son. We need to talk about Kevin. And just for the record, the we need to talk about X has become a tedious format for everything. I invented it. That was the first. One of the weird things about that title, having been copied so much, that my title now sounds imitative.
Yeah, I know. It's like Raymond Carver with the what we talk about when we talk about blank.
Yes, very similar, right?
Uh, um, all right. Well, I want to circle back to the book, and then we're gonna sign off. But I mean, I do. I don't know. I just think that this is this is a topic that I think really demands to be discussed honestly. And I do appreciate your being able to hold the contradiction, because it's amazing to me. I mean, I'm still that you still see people sort of like pretending that they've made a lifestyle decision, like pretending that they have some kind of you go girl boss choice that they've made. And I don't think it's that at all. I think that some people just really sort of deeply don't want to have kids. I mean, it always amazed me that people were more willing to make a joke about taking expensive vacations than to just say, this isn't something I want to do. I just really feel like it wouldn't be right for me. I mean, I always say, like, if I had had kids, I'm sure I would love my kids beyond imagination. I'm not so sure I would love my life. Now, is that inherently selfish? I guess so. But I don't really think I have the greatest genetics. My brother doesn't have kids either. And our branch of the family tree will have been lopped off. And I'm actually personally fine with that. I just don't think I don't think it's like a huge loss to humanity. Enough other people are having kids who are probably going to have better kids, and better generations to come. Okay. Our accidental live stream is about to wrap up here. But I mean, going back to this immigration thing, I mean, how are you feeling about this is a huge topic and we only have a few more minutes, but I mean, as you watch everything that's gone on in the
Don't
last
worry,
several
there are like
months,
25 other podcasts out there with
I
me
know
mouthing off
we
about
can direct you to
immigration.
them,
So
but I mean, well, I mean, you are an American, and you do live in New York for part of the year, but you say you've been an immigrant twice. I know you lived in Northern Ireland and also in the UK, and well, now you live in Portugal,
Northern
so maybe
Ireland is
three
in the
times.
UK, my
Sorry,
dear. That's a very politically touchy thing
okay,
to say.
Egypt is not in Africa. Okay, fine. But you lived in London, so you're right. This is all part of the same
Yes.
thing. Okay, but
I lived
so
in
what kind of
the
immigrant were
UK for
you?
36
Yeah.
years, and I recently moved to Portugal, where I am now. And both of those uh, departures entailed a fair bit of money, a lot of paperwork, and time, a lot of bother. Legal immigration to Western countries is a nightmare. And so I've been through it twice over. Actually, the Portuguese experience was even worse in terms of what was required to prove that that it was to their advantage to let me in. So that inevitably colors my perspective on illegal immigration in particular, because like this is the same with legal immigrants in the United States. They get very resentful of people who jump the queue, and still, that was what happened with the migrants who ended up in New York. They were put up by the city, sometimes for months, given 3 meals a day, free health care, free daycare, free everything.
Is that, do
And
people know that? I have to say, I was not living in New York like very much during that time. I did not realize that they were getting all those services. Was that common
yeah,
knowledge?
no, it isn't. But it was easy to find out if you wanted to. Because there are all these NGOs that are telling you
Right.
that they're advertising online all the benefits that migrants to New York were entitled to. So, and New York, for example, is one of those states that gives Medicaid to illegal migrants, and so does California,
Oh, yeah.
right? So big issue. And it's been said many times that you can have, I don't remember who originally stated it, but you can have an open border, or you can have a welfare state, but you can't have both. And this is an illustration of that. And so, and I think that the resentment that I experience at that is it's not only common to other immigrants who follow the rules in the U.S., but it's common to just a lot of Americans who have contributed to a system their whole lives, and think that the safety net is may be there for them, but never expect to avail themselves. And in any event, even if they ever did avail themselves, then it's something that they have supported and are genuinely entitled to. Right? Medicare, for example, if you've paid your taxes your whole life, and you finally qualify for Medicare, you don't sit there feeling grateful or like some kind of a mooch. You feel, I've paid for this. So I paid for this my whole life. I paid other people's Medicare bills my whole life. And now it's my turn for someone else to pay for my Medicare bills. It's a very different matter than coming into someone else's country and expecting to be put up. And not only you have not contributed to that system, but your ancestors, your family, that family before, they did nothing to build the country that you are now taking advantage of. And I am very sympathetic with that resentment. I think it's a kind of stealing. And that's of course not the progressive concept of this situation at all. These are disadvantaged people that, and we should feel very guilty about the fact that we have anything, as if a functional country is just a kind of accident. It's not an accident. It's a many multi-generational effort to build a place that is safe and orderly and functional. And the migrants who enter a country without a visa are trying to take advantage of things that they and theirs have not paid the price for.
Well, I mean, but the U.S. has different immigration patterns than Europe, and I mean, in the U.K. I mean, we have, and you've talked about this. I mean, over there, we have people coming from North Africa and the Middle East. It's a higher Muslim population. Assimilation patterns are different for those groups than I think over here, where we have people coming from Central America, where there is
Although
they're
during the Biden
Catholics,
administration,
yeah.
what another thing people don't realize, because it's a difference in previous patterns, but during the Biden administration, only about half of the migrants that crossed the border were Hispanic.
Because people were so where were the others
They
coming
were
from?
coming from everywhere.
And they were coming from everywhere, but they were coming, they were coming across the border, the
Yes,
southern
but from
border. Right,
everywhere, including
exactly.
from Africa.
Exactly. Yes, that's true.
Yeah. They would
Places
fly
like Russia.
into
Yes, that's
Nicaragua
right.
and then walk up, or
Right.
actually more often take a bus, or, there were NGOs ferrying parties up through Mexico, of the entire time. So, yeah, it is true that it is easier for the United States to absorb Hispanics, who ultimately, not all of them, but most of them hail from European background, a kind of dilute European background, and it's easier to absorb Catholics than it is Muslims, who are coming from a much more civilizationally distant culture. So I think Europe definitely has a tougher time on its hands, and there are issues that situation raises, that the United States doesn't have to deal with. That said, the U.S. likes to think of itself as a complete exception in relation to every rule regarding immigration, and I don't think the U.S. is an exception. It is always going to be a problem if you let in people from elsewhere in too large a quantity over too small a period of time. It's demanding of your native population that they extend hospitality that beyond what is reasonable. And also, when you bring in people in quantity in a short period of time, they're less motivated to assimilate, because they will seek each other out. This is a normal human impulse, to be around people who are like you, who speak your language, and tend to cluster geographically, and that discourages, fitting in with the rest of the country.
Right,
It
like what we
creates
saw in
atomization.
Minneapolis, with
Yeah,
the Somali
exactly.
community. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it seems like this is one of these issues that the idea that the left thinks one way and the right thinks another way is starting to erode. I mean, it's sort of one of these things like with gender, which is that, is the more people see what's actually happening on the ground. And homelessness is another one. I just did an episode about this. Like what we're seeing with our own eyes contradicts kind of what we have been told is the overall situation for such a long time, that I feel like, over in the next 10 years, I think that there will be a greater consensus about this stuff than at least what we have perceived to be the
Well,
big
certainly
divide.
during the Biden administration, there were a lot of Democrats. If you look at the polls, a lot of Democrats were starting to get angry that this is completely out of
Right,
control.
exactly. Yeah.
And Biden was letting in absolutely anybody who wanted to come in. I mean, it was just ridiculous. It was open season. It was a genuinely open border. And Americans, as much as they have, the nation of immigrants propaganda shoved down their throats, they don't like disorder, they don't like law breaking, and they don't like their taxes being diverted to people who aren't, who are foreigners, right? So that really did start to change. So what it didn't turn, you're right, it was no longer this like perfect left or right of center. I think it's going back to the way it used to be during the Trump administration, because Democrats, however much they polled as wanting to deport every illegal immigrant in the country. 67% of the country said that. So that's a lot of Democrats.
Wow.
It's not just Republicans. That was before the election. A lot of those people are starting to get cold feet about the reality of what it looks like to deport large numbers of people, some of whom were happy where they are. So, so that's it's kind of going back to a more of a Republican Democrat difference.
Right,
I do
right.
think that attitudes to immigration are probably the deciding factor in whether you are right or left wing.
Think about that. Okay. All right.
It's
Well,
almost, in other words, it's almost impossible to say, I support trans rights and I'm big on racial preferences in hiring and education. So I'm a progressive, but oh, by the way, I believe in a highly restrictive immigration policy. That doesn't ever happen.
yeah, that's true. Okay, well, we're gonna wrap up this very special accidentally live stream episode. I think somebody in the chat suggested that I had the settings. I did do a live stream a few weeks ago with Jenny Holland, and the settings might have been for that. This is, if anybody wants to be my volunteer producer, by the way, for the until the end of time, DM me, find me, because this is what happens when you're a one-person show. I'm gonna ask you one last question, but before that, since we are live, I'll just do my housekeeping here. If you want to, what I'm gonna, we're live now. There's not very many people watching because this was not announced, but I will put this up as a regular episode. It will go up early for paying subscribers, so you can become a paying subscriber on the Substack. Go to the unspeakablepodcast.com. That's the old name of the show, or to megandown.substack.com. Become a paying subscriber. What else? The Unspeakeasy, we have a lot of retreats and stuff happening this year. Our Los Angeles retreat is sold out. It is waiting list only. That's happening next month, but we are doing several more. I'm running a writer's workshop in upstate New York in September. That is for women only. And it is an official Unspeakeasy event, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with like culture war stuff. This is a regular nonfiction, personal essay and memoir workshop, 3 nights. We're also doing a co-ed overnight Unspeakeasy retreat. Is this are we tempting fate by doing these things? This is going to be larger, 25 to 30 people. We're going to have guest speakers. This is taking place in the Hudson Valley, October 19th through 21st. It is not open for registration yet, but it will be in the next month when we're going to announce the speakers. So just stay tuned. You can go to the unspeakeasy.com to find out about that. I'm also going to, I'm teaching a writing workshop. I'm just teaching more writing workshops. I will let you guys all know. One is going to be in May in Marin County for women. And one is going to be a Zoom class in the summer, co-ed on Zoom. And I'll let you know about that too. So just stay tuned. Okay, Lionel, what's your next, I know you're still obsessed with immigration, but is there what's the next obsession that you're going to filter into a fictionalized account of something or other?
Well, I haven't wholly committed to it yet because I have some problems with it. It's possible I'll take on the trans thing.
Oh, you have to. I mean, you can't. You're
That's
going to
what
have to.
everyone
You're going to
says.
have to eventually. Why not
Maybe.
now? No time like the present.
Oh, I just find the whole phenomenon so disturbing. So it's the reluctance is living with that material.
Yeah, but it has everything though. It's like a tapestry. It's like an opera. It has every element, you know? So,
Okay.
yeah, I bet a lot of people have written novels about that, but they have
Yeah,
not
but
been
they've almost
published.
all been of a
That's
certain sort.
Yes, but I bet that there's a lot of unpublished material because the publishers won't take a risk. But your publisher seems to, HarperCollins, so far has been
Yeah,
pretty daring.
yeah.
And
I wasn't sure they would buy this book, but they did, and I'm grateful. I think, they have a deserved reputation for publishing a wide range of opinions. So, that has made me more loyal to them that they have been loyal to me. That's the way loyalty is supposed to work.
Okay, well said. All right, Lionel, thank you. Thank you to everybody who found us here. And it's always so fun to talk with you. So until next time.
So long, indeed. Till next time.